Hi, welcome to Training Talk. My name is John Cullen, and I'm your host for the weekly series here at the Institute of Police Technology and Management, as we offer you a look inside of different training tips, case studies, and some of the excellent classes we offer as we strive to train the next generation of law enforcement. At this time, I'm going to send you over to our subject matter expert who's going to share this week's weekly tip.
Hey everyone, my name is Rick Evans. I'm the course media developer here with IPTM, and today we are going to be going into Adobe Lightroom to learn some tips and tricks on how to get the best out of your photos and how to recover some mistakes you might have made in the field to get the best photos that you can for your investigations or court presentations, okay? So we're going to dive right into Lightroom here, and the first thing you'll notice is this is what's known as Adobe Lightroom Classic, and it's the same as regular Lightroom functionality-wise. It just looks a little bit different on the interface. So I use Classic just because that's what I learned on. You can use whichever one you prefer. They do the same thing. All right, so this first photo is of my lovely Kia Soul out in the parking lot, and I overexposed this photo. Okay, so you can see over here on the histogram, over on the right-hand side, that when I hover over this little point here, it's showing me what is overexposed in this photo. And we want to make sure that nothing is overexposed or underexposed. So we're going to pay attention to this histogram as we make adjustments to correct for this photo. So the first thing I want to do, since I know it's overexposed, is we're going to go into the Basics tab here and go to the Exposure slider, and I'm just going to bring it down. And I'm watching the histogram up here in the corner, and I'm just paying attention to when I see that little white triangle go not white, but I don't want to go too dark. I think that is probably good right there. And that looks much better. I'm also going to bring up the shadows a little bit. Not that we really need to in this particular photo, but I'm going to just bring it up ever so slightly just so we are making sure to see all the details on the vehicle if we need to. The next thing I'm going to do is crop in a little bit because we just want the vehicle. That's all we're interested in for this particular photo. Now these wheels still look a little blown out. In fact, if you look at the histogram, they are still peaking a little bit there. So I'm going to bring down the highlights. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key. And as I drag the highlights, you'll see, oh, sorry, not the highlights. As I drag the whites down, you'll see if I bring it up, that is what's kind of peaking. And as soon as that goes away, I know they're not anymore. I'm going to bring down the highlights so I see some detail on the wheels. And that looks better. All right. So that is how you fix an overexposed photo. The next one that we're going to do is underexposed. So same process, just we're going the opposite way. So basically looking at the histogram, I can see that everything is kind of crushed to the left side of the histogram. Remember, the left side of the histogram is blacks. The right side is all your whites and brights. So what we want to do is bring that up a little bit. We're just going to bring up the exposure. And I'm going to bring up the shadows a little bit. And I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit because it does look like I am peaking a little bit here on the highlight side, although I don't really see it in anything critical. So I'm just going to not worry about that. Again, everything's still pretty much over to the left-hand side here. Crop in to the vehicle. And there you have it. So that's where we started, and this is where we ended up. So you can see quite a bit of difference. You can see a lot more detail in the side of the car. You can see where I clearly scraped the side there when I first got the car, and that just helps bring out those details. All right. So this is an example of what we call mixed lighting. So there's a lot that is in bright highlights over here on the left-hand side of the photo, and then over on the right-hand side is more in the shadows. And mixed lighting, especially when it's bright midday, is very difficult to get proper exposures. But luckily, Lightroom has plenty of options for us to bring out all the details. So we are going to bring down the highlights a little bit. All right, I'm watching the histogram. And I'm going to bring up the shadows a little bit. So now I can see everything that's kind of going on underneath that hood. And I can see all the components much more clearly by doing that. Again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just bring things up just to a point where they're not crushing or peaking. And there you go. All right, so that's where we started, and that's where we ended up. Okay? So this one is underexposed, but there's also some things I want to point out how we can bring out more detail in specific elements. So the first thing that we're going to do is obviously we're going to bring up the exposure on this so we can see what's going on in here. There's also some light coming in from the sun that's kind of hazy, and we have what's known as the dehaze slider. And what this does is it just basically gets rid of haze and adds more contrast in to help you see details a little bit better in hazy conditions. So that's very helpful. All right, so let's say that in this particular photo, we want to focus our attention on this terminal here on the battery. And I want to make sure that that is very clearly visible and we can see all the details in it. So I'm going to go to the detail slider. I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to drag this masking slider up. So basically, Lightroom is applying sharpening to everything in the photo by default. And all I have to do is I can tell it what I want sharpened by adding this mask. So I'm going to hold down Alt, drag this masking slider up, and now everything that is sort of highlighted in white is where the sharpening is being applied. Okay, and that looks good there, and I'm actually going to bring up the sharpening a little bit. Oops. So that is how we can add a little bit of sharpening and detail into some areas, and also we can go in here and add some texture and clarity, and that will further help enhance those details on that little terminal there, just so you can see any kind of corrosion or damage or anything to the part. That just helps bring out those details a little bit more. All right, so this last one is, again, a mixed lighting situation. So we want to be able to see the dark side of the car that's in shadow so we could see all the detail. But we don't want to overexpose what's in the sun here. So basically, we're going to use the shadow slider, bring that up. And that actually did a pretty good job already. I can bring this exposure up a little bit more, drop the highlights. Again, watching the histogram, just making sure everything looks nice and even here. Kind of have the lump sort of in the middle, nothing peaking, nothing crushed in the blacks. And that looks pretty good. Now we can see everything that's going on the side of this car, and any details that you might need to bring out, you can now see. All right, so those are just some basic tips that you can use when you dive into Lightroom to get just more out of the photos in case you made those very common mistakes in the field. I hope you found those helpful, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next photo tip. Take care.
Thanks for watching this week's Training Talk tip. We hope that you found this beneficial as you move forward in your investigations. Please be sure to comment if there's any future Training Talk tips that we could bring to you or areas of interest. And while doing so, we'd like you to follow us on all of our social media channels so that you can stay in tune with the latest training. While doing so, also check us out at IPTM.org, where we have a large catalog of courses that are offered throughout the country. And if there's not one nearby, perhaps reach out to us and we could bring the training to you. Again, we hope that you follow along, found this useful, and we look forward to seeing you next week.